How to survive the first 72 hours when civilization collapses, and more importantly, understand what actually breaks first so you're not standing there like an idiot wondering why your phone won't work. Right now, look around you. Your lights work, your phone's got battery, your fridge is humming that comfortable white noise that says, everything's fine, go back to sleep. You think you've got time, you think there'll be warnings, you think when shit hits the fan, you'll have a moment to catch your breath, grab your bug out bag, and execute your Pinterest perfect survival plan. Welcome to the first 60 seconds of the collapse. But here's the kicker, you think this is about learning to hunt rabbits and purify water? Wrong, dead wrong. This is about the brutal, immediate, physiological, and psychological implosion that happens in the first 5 minutes to 5 days. This is about understanding that society isn't a building that falls down, it's a house of cards that vanishes the moment someone breathes too hard. And brother, someone just sneezed. I'm going to walk you through the 5 systems that collapse so fast you won't have time to Google, what do I do when? Because Google? Yeah, Google's gone too. These aren't the sexy survival skills you see on YouTube. This is the unglamorous, terrifying scientific reality of what happens when the comfortable lie we call civilization gets exposed for the tissue paper it actually is. You're not ready, none of you are, but maybe, just maybe, by the end of this, you'll be slightly less dead when it counts. Let's begin. Hour 0, minute 1. The lights don't flicker, they don't dim romantically like in the movies, they just stop. And in that same instant, that exact same nanosecond, 17 other things die with them. Your fridge goes silent, your router's green lights blink out, the constant electromagnetic hum you've been soaking in your entire life, that invisible ocean of radio waves and cellular signals and Wi-Fi networks just evaporates. And your neighborhood, that comfortable bubble of modern safety, transforms into something primal in the time it takes your pupils to dilate. Here's what you don't understand about the electrical grid. It's not a thing, it's a miracle. It's a precise, impossibly delicate ballet of supply and demand happening at the speed of light. Power plants generate electricity at the exact moment you're using it, not before, not after. The frequency has to stay at exactly 60 Hz in North America, or the whole system tears itself apart. We're talking tolerance measured in fractions of a hertz. One major power plant goes down, the grid automatically reroutes, but that creates overload on other plants. Those plants detect the overload and shut down to protect themselves, which overloads more plants. It's called a cascading failure, and it moves at approximately 670 million miles per hour, the speed of electricity. From first failure to total blackout, 30 seconds, maybe 45 if you're lucky. The science of the grid death. The North American power grid is actually 3 separate grids barely held together by what engineers call tie lines. Eastern interconnection, Western interconnection, Texas, because of course Texas decided to do their own thing. These grids operate on something called synchronized phase angle. Every generator has to be spinning at exactly the same frequency, perfectly in sync. When a major disruption hits, EMP, cyber attack, physical infrastructure destruction, solar flare, that synchronization shatters. Power plants detect abnormal frequency and voltage. Their automatic protective systems kick in, they disconnect. And just like that, you've got a chain reaction propagating through substations and transformers faster than you can say emergency preparedness. The 2003 Northeast blackout started with tree branches touching a power line in Ohio. 50 million people without power in 8 minutes, not hours, minutes. And that was just an accident, a system failure. Imagine something deliberate. Imagine something designed to cause maximum damage. The Department of Energy has run the simulations. A coordinated attack on just 9 of the country's 55,000 electrical substations could take down the entire grid for 18 months. Not 18 days, 18 months. The fix. Your generator obsession is adorable, but fundamentally flawed. Consumer generators run on gasoline, which we'll discuss shortly, but here's the immediate problem. They're loud, catastrophically loud, 70 to 90 decibels, which means everyone within a quarter mile knows exactly where the guy with power lives. Remember that scene in 28 Days Later, where they spot the one lit up building from miles away? Yeah, you just painted a target on your house that says, valuable resources here, come loot me. First action, right now, before the grid dies, get a solar charging system. Not the big rooftop panels, those scream, I have equipment worth stealing. small portable panels, 100 to 200 watts. They're silent, they're renewable, and they're portable. Pair them with lithium power stations, not lead-acid batteries, those are boat anchors. You want systems that can charge your critical devices, radios, tactical flashlights, medical equipment, not your PlayStation, not your hairdryer, critical, survival, gear. Second layer, light discipline. This is military doctrine and it's going to keep you alive. When the grid dies, your house goes dark. It stays dark. No candles in windows, no flashlights waving around. You black out every window with blackout curtains or contractor bags and duct tape. You create a light-controlled interior room where you can use minimal illumination without it bleeding outside. The US Army calls this blackout conditions, and there's a reason. Light is a beacon that screams humans here to anyone hunting humans. Third backup, Faraday cage storage. Take a metal trash can, line it with cardboard, store backup electronics and solar equipment inside, seal it. This protects against EMP, electromagnetic pulse, that would fry every circuit within line of sight. It's not paranoid prepping, it's physics. EMPs induce current in conductors. Metal cage blocks electromagnetic waves. Simple, effective, cheap. Pro tip, the grid dying also kills water pumps. If you're on city water, you've got whatever's in your pipes and whatever pressure is left in the system. Maybe 3 to 6 hours of flow, declining fast. If you're on a well, your electric pump just became a very expensive lawn ornament. This isn't tangential, this is the cascade. One system dies and takes 17 others with it. I'll just fill up the bathtub when things look bad plan. You won't have time. The grid dies in 30 seconds. Your bathtub takes 15 minutes to fill. Do the math. Pop culture reality check. Every apocalypse movie treats electricity like it's just gone, and everyone adapts. Wrong. The Walking Dead glossed over this entirely. Suddenly everyone's just living with fire and candles like it's the 1800s. The reality? The sudden death of electricity causes immediate societal fracture. No traffic lights means gridlock and accidents within minutes. No gas pumps, they're electric. No ATMs. No credit card readers. No modern vehicles, they're computers on wheels. No hospital life support. No refrigeration, no communication. Everything that defines modern civilization stops in the time it takes you to realize your phone isn't charging. Remember the 2021 Texas freeze? Grid failure. People froze to death in their homes in a first world country. In 72 hours, over 200 people died, not from the cold itself, but from the cascading failures. No heat, no water, pipes burst, carbon monoxide poisoning from desperate indoor heating attempts, car accidents from iced roads without traffic control. And that was with the knowledge that power would eventually return. Imagine that same scenario, but no one's coming to fix it. Ever. The darkness isn't just lack of light, it's the death of every assumption your life is built on. The grid doesn't collapse, it executes, fast, brutal, and permanent, and it takes your comfortable illusions with it. Hour 12, day 1. The grocery store parking lot is already half full at 6 a.m., and it's not the usual crowd of early morning coffee seekers. These people have that look, the wide-eyed realization dawning that their pantries contain maybe 4 days of actual food, and that's if they stretch the condiments. The automatic doors slide open, the lights are still on, backup generators for now, and you walk into what used to be abundance. Bare shelves stare back at you like empty eye sockets. Here's what just collapsed while you were sleeping. The most sophisticated, fragile, absurdly complex logistics network ever created by human civilization. The modern supply chain doesn't stock stores anymore, it is the store. That grocery store operates on something called just-in-time delivery, which is corporate speak for we have almost nothing in the back because warehousing costs money. Your average supermarket has 3 days of food, not 3 months, 3 days. And that's assuming normal buying patterns, not panic-driven hoarding where people buy 17 months of toilet paper because apparently civilization's collapse means you still care about bathroom comfort. The trucks stopped rolling 12 hours ago, the warehouses are locked down or already looted. The distribution centers lost power and their inventory management systems with it. And every single calorie of food in your city is already spoken for, either on someone's shelf or in someone's cart or being fought over in aisle 7. The mathematics of starvation. Let's talk numbers, because numbers don't lie. The average American city has approximately 3 to 7 days of food within its borders at any given time. This includes supermarkets, restaurants, warehouses, everything. The average American household has even less, about 3 to 5 days of food in their pantry. The human body can survive approximately 3 weeks without food, but here's the kicker. You don't get 3 weeks of functional survival. After 72 hours without adequate calories, cognitive function starts declining, decision-making deteriorates, physical strength decreases by approximately 15 to 20%. After 1 week, you're operating at maybe 60% capacity. After 2 weeks, people start becoming desperate enough to do things they'd never consider in normal circumstances. The psychology is even worse. It's called panic buying, but that's a sanitized term for primal hoarding instinct triggered by scarcity perception. Behavioral economic studies show that when people perceive scarcity, even artificial scarcity, they hoard 5 to 10 times more than they actually need. Remember COVID-19 and the great toilet paper crisis of 2020? Stores weren't actually running out. The supply chain was fine, but perception of scarcity created real scarcity through panic buying. Now imagine that scenario, but the trucks actually aren't coming. Ever. You've got approximately 72 hours from the initial collapse until grocery stores are completely stripped. Pharmacies go even faster, 24 to 48 hours max, because people realize insulin and heart medication and antibiotics are more valuable than gold when you can't manufacture more. Gas stations? Depends on whether their pumps work without grid power. Most don't, but figure 12 to 24 hours until the underground tanks are empty. The fix: you needed to solve this 6 months ago, but let's work with what you've got. Food storage isn't about hoarding freeze-dried camping meals that cost $3 per serving. It's about caloric density, shelf stability, and nutritional completeness. Rice, beans, pasta, canned goods. These are boring. They're also 10 cents per serving and last literally years. You want a minimum of 2,000 calories per person per day. Family of 4, that's 8,000 calories daily. For 90 days, that's 720,000 calories. Sounds like a lot until you do the math. 50-pound bag of rice is approximately 80,000 calories. Cost? About $20. 9 bags gets you close to 3 months for a family of 4. Add beans for protein, canned vegetables for vitamins, salt and oil for flavor and fat. Total cost for 90-day supply, around $500 to $800 if you're smart about it. But storage is only half the equation. You need the rule of threes tattooed on your brain. 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter in harsh conditions, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Notice food is last because water kills you faster. When the supply chain collapses, municipal water treatment plants have maybe 24 to 72 hours of chemical supplies, chlorine, fluoride, pH adjusters, before they can't guarantee safe water. Then you're looking at bacterial contamination, E. coli, Giardia, Cryptosporidium. These don't kill you immediately, they dehydrate you through diarrhea, which kills you in 3 to 5 days. Water storage, 1 gallon per person per day, minimum. That's drinking only, no cooking, no hygiene. Realistic number, 3 gallons per person per day. Family of 4 for 90 days, 1,080 gallons. That's approximately 135 of those 8-gallon water containers from Walmart. Not practical? Correct. That's why you need filtration. Sawyer mini filters, $20, filters 100,000 gallons. Life straw, $15, filters 1,000 gallons. Ceramic filters like Berkey, $200 to $400, filters basically forever. And water purification tablets as backup, iodine or chlorine dioxide, $10 for 50 tablets. Here's the part that keeps you alive: diversified sourcing. You don't just have food stored, you have the means to acquire more. Fishing gear, hooks, line, nets, trapping supplies, snares, cage traps, hunting equipment if you're trained and have access. But more importantly, gardening supplies, seeds, heirloom, non-GMO so they reproduce. Soil amendments, hand tools because your electric tiller is now decorative. Knowledge. You need to know how to actually grow food, which most people don't despite their Pinterest boards. Pro tip, food storage attracts attention. Noise attracts attention. Smells attract attention. When you're cooking rice and beans and your neighbor hasn't eaten in 4 days, that smell drifts. They notice. Suddenly you're negotiating through your front door with someone you used to share gardening tips with. This is why operational security, OPSEC, matters. Don't tell people what you have. Don't display it. Don't cook smelly food during crisis times or do it in ways that contain the smell. And for God's sake, don't be the person grilling steaks on day 3 of the collapse while your neighborhood starves. That's how you become a target. Pop culture parallel, The Road, Cormac McCarthy's brutally realistic depiction of post-apocalyptic America. Know what most of that book is about? Finding food, scrounging through abandoned houses for canned goods, avoiding other survivors because they're cannibals. The protagonist's entire existence revolves around the supply chain having collapsed years ago. Or look at The Walking Dead again. They spend entire seasons trying to establish farms and supply runs. AMC sanitized it, but the reality is worse. Those foraging runs into abandoned stores. By week 4 of a real collapse, every building has been picked clean within a 50-mile radius. Every single building. Historical reality check, Venezuela, not post-apocalyptic, just economic collapse starting around 2014. Modern country, oil-rich nation, supply chain breakdown due to government incompetence and hyperinflation. Result? People lost an average of 24 pounds in 2017. They literally called it the Maduro diet. Zoo animals were stolen and eaten, pets disappeared, crime exploded, and this was with international aid and with neighboring countries providing some relief. Imagine that scenario, but global. Or Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria 2017. Category 5, hurricane, power grid destroyed, supply chains severed. FEMA took weeks to establish meaningful aid. In the meantime, people died from lack of medication, from drinking contaminated water, from infected wounds that couldn't be treated. Official death toll, around 3,000 people, not from the hurricane itself, from the collapse of infrastructure and supply chain afterward. The supply chain isn't a thing that breaks, it's a living organism that dies. And when it dies, it takes the comfortable fiction that food just appears in stores with it. Your grocery store isn't a building full of food, it's a buffer between you and starvation that lasts exactly 72 hours. Day 4, hour 96. The police cruiser sits abandoned at the intersection, driver's door open, radio crackling with unanswered calls. The officer who was driving it, home with his family. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about the thin blue line. It's drawn by people who have families too. People who've just watched the same collapse you have. People who've done the same math about how many meals they have left. And they're not coming to save you. Civil order doesn't collapse in some dramatic explosion of violence. It evaporates through simple, rational self-interest multiplied by thousands of individual decisions. Each cop, each EMT, each firefighter, each National Guardsman looks at their paycheck, which stopped coming when banks failed at hour 48, and looks at their kids and makes the obvious choice. The badge doesn't feed children, the oath doesn't protect families, and suddenly the entire apparatus of law and order that kept society's worst impulses in check just walks away. Welcome to the math of societal breakdown. When formal consequences disappear, informal behavior changes immediately. The psychology of lawlessness. There's a principle in criminology called the certainty of punishment theory. It states that people obey laws not primarily because of the severity of punishment, but because of the certainty of getting caught. Crime deterrence is approximately 90% certainty-based and only 10% severity-based. Think about it. You don't speed just because the ticket is expensive. You slow down when you see the cop. The cop is the deterrent. The visible enforcement is what modifies behavior. Now remove the cops, all of them, simultaneously. Studies of disaster scenarios show a predictable timeline for civil order collapse. First, 24 hours, confusion and shock. People still operating on pre-collapse social norms. Hours 24 to 48, realization and initial panic buying, some minor theft and opportunism. Hours 48 to 72, organized looting begins, violence increases, first responders stop responding. Hours 72 to 96, complete breakdown of public order in urban areas. Rule of law replaced by rule of force. After 96 hours, you're living in a different world with different rules, and the primary rule is this: whoever has the most force makes the rules. The numbers are stark. The NYPD has about 36,000 officers for a population of 8.3 million people. That's approximately 1 cop per 230 citizens. The LAPD, about 9,000 officers for 4 million people, 1 cop per 445 citizens, and that's assuming all of them stay on duty during collapse, which they won't. Conservative estimates suggest 40 to 60% of law enforcement abandons their posts within 72 hours of a major societal breakdown to protect their own families. Suddenly, that ratio becomes 1 cop per 500 to 1,000 citizens. And those cops? They're operating without communication networks, grid is down, Backup, everyone else left. Supplies, no resupply chain. Or legal protection, courts aren't functioning. The fix, you become your own law enforcement, which sounds empowering until you realize what that actually means. It means sleepless nights on watch. It means making impossible decisions about who you help and who you don't. It means potentially using force to protect yourself and your family. And it means understanding that the biggest threat isn't zombies or foreign invaders, it's your neighbors. Home hardening, right now, your house is either a hard target or a soft target. Hard targets get bypassed for easier options, solid core doors, deadbolts, door reinforcement hardware, cost $200 to $500, security film on windows, prevents easy smash and grab, forces intruders to make noise and take time, cost $100 to $300, thorny bushes under windows, roses, barberry, hawthorn, cheap, effective, painful. Motion sensor lights, solar powered so they work when grid's down. These don't prevent break-ins, they make break-ins harder, louder, and more time consuming. Criminals do cost-benefit analysis. Make the cost too high, they move to easier targets. Perimeter awareness. You need to know who's approaching before they arrive. Security cameras are useless without power and internet. Dogs are better. A dog barks at unfamiliar sounds and smells. A dog makes noise that warns you. Dogs have been humanity's early warning system for 15,000 years because they work. Don't need a trained attack dog, need a dog that barks. Even small dogs are loud and annoying, which is the point. Community defense. This is the controversial part, but it's also the math. One person can't maintain 24-hour security. They'll sleep, and they'll die in their sleep. Two people can trade 12-hour shifts, but that's unsustainable past a week. You need a community, trusted neighbors, family, friends, who collectively provide security. Shifts rotate. People sleep while others watch. Strength in numbers isn't a cliche, it's survival math, but choose wisely. Your community defense pact is also your potential threat if things go bad internally. Force continuum understanding. This is military and law enforcement doctrine, and you need to internalize it. Presence. Being visibly prepared deters. Verbal commands. Leave now, said with confidence. Non-lethal deterrence. Pepper spray, batons, warning shots if legal in your area. Lethal force as absolute last resort. The goal isn't to fight. Fighting means you've already lost because even if you win, you're injured, expended resources, made noise, and attracted attention. The goal is deterrence. Be hard enough target that threats choose someone else. Weapons consideration. This is legally and ethically complex and varies by jurisdiction, but here's the reality. When law enforcement is gone, you're the only one protecting you. Firearms if legal, and you're trained. Not Call of Duty trained, actual trained. Shooting ranges, safety courses, tactical training. An untrained person with a gun is more dangerous to themselves than to threats. Alternatives: baseball bats, crowbars, machetes, axes, all legal everywhere, all lethal in trained hands. Non-lethal: pepper spray, tasers, where legal, improvised weapons. The weapon matters less than the will and training to use it. Pro tip: the legal system doesn't disappear, it just stops functioning temporarily. When order returns, and it usually does eventually, you'll potentially face legal consequences for actions taken during collapse. This is the awful calculus. Do what's necessary to survive, but understand there might be a reckoning later. Document everything. Witnesses. Video if possible, phones can still record without service. Create a record that shows you acted in self-defense. It might save you from prison when the courts restart. Here's the truth that keeps you awake at night. Your neighborhood has criminals in it right now, not movie villains, regular people who occasionally commit crimes but are held in check by consequences. Those consequences vanish at hour 96. That guy 3 houses down who you suspect deals drugs. He's got a distribution network and enforcement skills you don't. That troubled teen who you see loitering, he's got friends and nothing to lose. The domestic abuser 4 doors down who the cops visit monthly, his victim can't call 911 anymore. Civil order isn't a system, it's an agreement. And agreements require all parties to keep honoring them. When enough people stop, the agreement ends, and it ends fast. 96 hours fast. Hour 6, before you've even noticed, your bank account shows $47,392.16. That number on the screen, those precise digits that represent years of work, sacrifice, delayed gratification, just became fiction. Not worthless exactly, not yet, but abstract, theoretical. Because here's the thing about modern money, it doesn't exist. I mean, it really doesn't exist. It's not backed by gold, not backed by silver, not backed by anything except collective faith and computer systems that just stopped computing. 97% of all money is digital, not physical, just numbers in databases that require electricity to access and networks to verify. The grid died at hour 0. The financial system died 6 hours later when backup generators ran dry and redundant systems failed, and the complex web of verification and authentication that makes a number on a screen into buying power just stopped existing. You're holding a debit card that's now a small piece of decorative plastic. The architecture of digital wealth. Let's talk about how money actually works in 2025, because most people still think in terms of gold vaults and paper bills. The Federal Reserve estimates that only 3 to 8% of the US money supply exists as physical currency, actual bills and coins. The rest, database entries. When you get paid, your employer's bank sends electronic instruction to your bank. Numbers change in 2 databases. No physical object moves. When you buy something with a card, your bank's computer talks to the merchant's bank's computer through multiple intermediary computers, payment processors, card networks, verification systems. The transaction is approved or denied based on whether these computers agree that you have enough abstract numerical value to transfer abstract numerical value to someone else. This system requires constant electricity, functioning networks, operational servers, working satellites, active security protocols, and most critically, faith that the numbers mean something. All of that just failed simultaneously. ATMs don't work. They're computers connected to banks through networks, both dead. Credit cards don't work, same reason. Debit cards, Apple Pay, Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, all of it requires digital infrastructure that no longer functions. Checks are paper, but they're useless without banks to clear them, which requires those same digital systems. And your bank branch? Even if it has physical cash in the vault, unlikely. Most branches keep minimal cash, maybe $50,000 to $100,000 for a large branch. You can't access it without power to open the time-locked vault and computer systems to verify your identity and account balance. The timeline is brutal. Hour 0, grid fails. Hours 0 to 6. Banks run on backup power, but transaction networks fail because they require internet and telecommunication infrastructure. Hours 6 to 12. Bank backup generators run out of fuel or fail. Hours 12 to 24. First bank runs begin as people realize their digital wealth is inaccessible. Hours 24 to 48. Complete chaos at any bank that can open, martial law declared at financial institutions. By hour 72, the concept of your bank account has become meaningless because there's no way to verify, access, or use that information. The fix: you needed cash yesterday. Physical currency, paper bills, the stuff you can hold in your hand and directly exchange for goods without any intermediary system. Financial advisors typically recommend 3 to 6 months of expenses in emergency savings. That's cute. For collapse scenarios, you want 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash in your physical possession in small bills. Why small bills? Because making change requires the other person to have change. When the store can't access registers and computer systems, nobody knows prices anymore. Everything becomes negotiation and barter. A $20 bill is infinitely more useful than a $100 bill because you can actually break it down in transactions. Optimal distribution: lots of 1s, 5s, and 10s, some 20s, few 50s, minimal hundreds. That $5,000 emergency fund should be something like $1,000 in 1s, $1,500 in 5s, $1,500 in 10s, $800 in 20s, $200 in 50s, and hundreds. Storage is critical. Bank safe deposit boxes are inaccessible when banks close. Home safes are obvious targets if someone knows you have one. The solution? Multiple small caches in different locations, hidden in your house, false electrical outlets, inside furniture, false bottom drawers, buried on your property in waterproof containers with GPS coordinates memorized, with trusted family or friends in sealed envelopes marked emergency only. Diversified storage means if one cache is discovered or compromised, you haven't lost everything. But here's where it gets complicated. Cash has a limited lifespan in collapse scenarios. Phase 1, days 1 to 7. Cash is king. Everyone still thinks in terms of dollar values. Prices inflate rapidly, but cash works. Phase 2, weeks 2 to 4. Cash value deteriorates as people realize it's just paper backed by a government that might not exist anymore. bartering begins. Phase 3, month 2 plus. Cash becomes essentially worthless. Tangible goods and services are the only real currency. This is why you need multi-phase wealth storage. Phase 1 wealth, cash. Phase 2 wealth, precious metals, gold, silver. Inherent value, universally recognized, portable. 1 ounce silver coins run about $25 to $35 each and are perfect for medium transactions. 1 ounce gold coins, $2,000 plus, are for large transactions or wealth preservation. Phase 3 wealth, tangible skills and resources. What you know, what you can do, what you can produce. Barter economy understanding. When currency fails, trade becomes direct. You need things other people want. Ammunition, if legal in your area, becomes currency. Stable value, always in demand, easily counted. Alcohol, liquor stores get looted fast, but people still want to drink or use alcohol for trade. Tobacco, addicts need their fix. Coffee, caffeine addiction is real. Batteries, power is precious. Basic medications, pain relievers, anti-diarrheal, antihistamines. Seeds, people need to grow food. The key is stockpiling items that are shelf-stable, universally desired, easily divisible, and compact. Pro tip, don't tell anyone what you have. When people know you have cash or gold or valuable trade goods, you become a target. OPSEC applies to wealth more than almost anything else. Your starving neighbor doesn't need to know you have 50 pounds of rice and $5,000 in cash. They need to think you're suffering just like them. This sounds cruel. It's survival. Every person you help is a person who might tell others about your resources, and suddenly you're dealing with 20 desperate people instead of 2. Debt becomes interesting in collapse scenarios. Your mortgage, credit cards, student loans. Those obligations exist in the same digital system that just failed. The practical reality is that debt becomes unenforceable when courts and banks aren't operational. But here's the gamble. If civilization restores, and historically it usually does eventually, those obligations come back. They'll find you, wage garnishment, property liens, legal action, so the calculation becomes survive now, deal with legal consequences later, or honor debt obligations that might be impossible to pay anyway. Pop culture reflection. Mr. Robot did this better than most shows. Season 3, E-Corp hack, all debt records erased. The show depicted the immediate chaos, people celebrating debt freedom, then realizing their savings are gone too, then economic collapse as credit systems fail. Or look at It's a Wonderful Life, the bank run scene. George Bailey's building and loan about to fail because everyone wants their money simultaneously. He has assets, but they're tied up in loans and investments. He can't convert them to cash fast enough. The building and loan survives only because people agree to take less and wait. In collapse scenarios, nobody's waiting, nobody's taking less, everyone's grabbing everything they can. Historical lesson. Weimar Germany, 1921 to 1923. Hyperinflation so severe that currency became literally worthless. People burned money for heat because it was cheaper than buying firewood. A loaf of bread cost billions of marks. Workers were paid twice per day because the money lost value hourly. The middle class was completely wiped out. Lifetime savings became worthless overnight. Or Zimbabwe, 2008, inflation rate of 79.6 billion% month over month at its peak. The government printed $100 trillion notes. Those notes couldn't buy a loaf of bread. The currency collapsed entirely. They eventually abandoned it and adopted foreign currencies. Or more recently, Cyprus, 2013, banking crisis. The government froze bank accounts. People couldn't access their money. ATMs ran dry. When accounts reopened weeks later, the government had seized a percentage of deposits over 100,000 euros to bail out banks. Legal theft. Or Greece during the debt crisis. Capital controls limited ATM withdrawals to 60 euros per day. Your money that you earned and saved became inaccessible by government decree. Here's the nightmare truth. Your wealth isn't yours. It's permission to access numerical value stored in systems controlled by others. Those systems fail, that permission evaporates. The balance in your account is a comforting fiction maintained by electricity and faith. Cut the electricity, watch the faith die with it. 6 hours, that's how long it takes for your life savings to become a ghost story you tell yourself about the world that used to exist. Hour 48, day 2. The hospital emergency room hasn't gone dark. Backup generators are still running for now, but it's not the sterile, organized facility from 48 hours ago. It's become something else, something primal, The triage system has inverted. They're not treating patients based on medical urgency anymore. They're treating based on resource conservation. If you require extensive intervention to maybe survive, you're getting pushed to the expectant category, which is medical terminology for we're going to make you comfortable while you die because we can't waste resources on low probability outcomes. Welcome to Battlefield Medicine, Civilian Edition. Here's what just collapsed. The most sophisticated, resource-intensive, technology-dependent system in modern civilization. American healthcare operates on assumption of unlimited resources. If you need it, the hospital can get it. Need blood? Blood bank. Need medication? Pharmacy. Need advanced imaging? MRI, CT scan, X-ray machines ready. Need surgery? Operating rooms with backup power and supply chains that deliver exactly what's needed, exactly when it's needed. All of that just became fantasy, and the people who need insulin, dialysis, chemotherapy, blood pressure medication, immunosuppressants for organ transplants, they just got death sentences with 48-hour to 2-week expiration dates. The medical cascade, failure. Modern hospitals are computers surrounded by life support equipment powered by electricity and supplied by complex logistics chains. Let's break down the cascade. Grid dies at hour 0. Hospitals switch to backup generators immediately, legally required to have 72 to 96 hours of fuel for emergency power. But generators only power critical systems, life support, emergency lighting, essential equipment. The HVAC struggles. Refrigeration for medications and blood becomes intermittent. Electronic health records? Inaccessible without network connectivity. Hour 24. First fuel shortage warnings. Hospitals burn through generator fuel faster than expected because load is higher than planned. More critical patients, longer runtime, no grid return. Some hospitals send armed guards to fuel depots to secure diesel. Others start rationing generator usage, rotating which wings get power. Hour 48. Medication supply crisis begins. Pharmacies aren't resupplying. The trucks stopped coming. Hospitals have maybe 3 to 7 days of medication on site, assuming normal usage, but usage isn't normal. Trauma cases flood in from accidents, violence, collapse-related injuries, pain medication depletes, antibiotics deplete, insulin depletes. Hospitals start turning away non-critical patients because they simply can't treat them. Hour 72. Staffing collapse. Doctors and nurses are human, they have families, they've been working 36-hour shifts with no break and no idea when relief is coming. They start leaving, not because they're bad people, because they're parents and spouses and children of elderly parents who also need help. Medical staff retention drops to maybe 30 to 50% within 72 hours of major societal breakdown. Hour 96. Total operational breakdown. Generators run dry. Some hospitals go completely dark. Others maintain minimal emergency power. Surgery becomes impossible. Can't maintain sterile environment. Can't power equipment. Don't have anesthesia supplies. The hospital becomes little more than a place where people come to die slightly more comfortably than they would at home. The chronic condition, catastrophe. About 133 million Americans, that's roughly 40% of the population, have at least one chronic health condition requiring ongoing medication or treatment. Let's run the numbers on just a few. Diabetes. 37 million Americans require insulin or oral diabetes medication. Without it, type 1 diabetics die in days to weeks from diabetic ketoacidosis. Type 2 diabetics fare slightly better but face severe complications, nerve damage, kidney failure, infections, amputations. Timeline, 1 to 4 weeks depending on severity. Heart disease, 18 million Americans take blood pressure medication. Stop taking it? Hypertension spikes, risk of stroke, heart attack, heart failure increases exponentially. Timeline, 2 to 8 weeks before major cardiac events. Dialysis. 500,000 Americans require regular dialysis for kidney failure. Dialysis requires electricity, clean water, specialized equipment, trained technicians. When hospitals lose power and water treatment fails, dialysis stops. Timeline without dialysis. 5 to 10 days before toxin buildup becomes fatal. Mental health medications. 41 million Americans take medication for anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. Suddenly stopping psychotropic medications causes severe withdrawal, return of underlying conditions, potential psychotic breaks, suicidal ideation. Timeline: immediate to 2 weeks for critical deterioration. The math is genocidal. 40% of the population becomes medically vulnerable within 2 weeks of infrastructure collapse. The fix: medical preparedness is complex because medicine is complex, but there are tiers of preparation. You can't become a doctor overnight, but you can build capability. First aid training right now. Take a wilderness first responder course, 72-hour certification, or at minimum a comprehensive first aid course. Wilderness medicine teaches you to manage injuries when you can't call 911, can't reach a hospital, and don't have modern equipment. It's perfect for collapse scenarios. Topics covered: wound management, fracture stabilization, burn treatment, severe bleeding control, shock management, environmental injuries. Cost: $500 to $1,000 for WFR cert, worth every penny. Medical supply stockpiling. The FDA won't like this advice, but reality doesn't care about regulations. You need medications. Prescription medications if possible. Talk to your doctor about emergency supplies. But absolute minimum, you need over-the-counter stockpiles. Pain management: ibuprofen, acetaminophen, aspirin, hundreds of tablets, they last years. Infections: antibiotic ointments, neosporin, antifungals, gastrointestinal, antidiarrheal, Imodium, laxatives, antacids. Allergic reactions: antihistamines, Benadryl, hydrocortisone cream, wound care, sterile gauze, trauma pads, Israeli bandages, tourniquets, CAT or soft TW, quick clot or Celox hemostatic agents, butterfly closures, superglue, yes, actual superglue, it's medically effective for wound closure. Advanced medical stockpiling. This enters legal gray areas, but in collapse scenarios, legality becomes academic. Fish antibiotics, yes, actual aquarium antibiotics, amoxicillin, doxycycline, are chemically identical to human antibiotics. They're available without prescription. Veterinary supply stores sell medical equipment. Underground markets exist for prescription medications. I'm not recommending illegal activity. I'm describing reality. When your child has a bacterial infection and hospitals are non-functional, your moral calculus changes. Pain management: ibuprofen, acetaminophen, aspirin, hundreds of tablets, they last years. Infections: antibiotic ointments, neosporin, antifungals, gastrointestinal, antidiarrheal, Imodium, laxatives, antacids. Allergic reactions: antihistamines, Benadryl, hydrocortisone cream, wound care, sterile gauze, trauma pads, Israeli bandages, tourniquets, CAT or soft TW, quick clot or Celox hemostatic agents, butterfly closures, superglue, yes, actual superglue, it's medically effective for wound closure. Advanced medical stockpiling. This enters legal gray areas, but in collapse scenarios, legality becomes academic. Fish antibiotics, yes, actual aquarium antibiotics, amoxicillin, doxycycline, are chemically identical to human antibiotics. They're available without prescription. Veterinary supply stores sell medical equipment. Underground markets exist for prescription medications. I'm not recommending illegal activity, I'm describing reality. When your child has a bacterial infection and hospitals are non-functional, your moral calculus changes. Chronic condition preparation. If you or family members require regular medication, you need 6 months minimum supply, ideally 1 year. Work with your doctor. Many will write 90-day prescriptions instead of 30-day. Fill them immediately. Don't wait. Rotate stock. Use oldest first, replace with new. For insulin-dependent diabetics, consider learning to source and use animal insulin, pork beef. It's older technology but doesn't require modern supply chains. For blood pressure, lose weight now. Exercise now. Reduce sodium now. Make your condition less medication dependent while you still can. Medical knowledge acquisition. Books, physical books, not digital. Where There Is No Doctor by David Werner, comprehensive medical guide for resource-limited settings. Where There Is No Dentist, dental problems become life-threatening when untreated. Emergency war surgery. NATO handbook, freely available as PDF, download and print. These teach you to practice medicine when you don't have modern resources. Pro tip: antibiotics require knowing what infection you're treating. Broad-spectrum antibiotics, amoxicillin, doxycycline, cover most common bacterial infections, but incorrect antibiotic use creates resistance and wastes supplies. Learn to identify infections: cellulitis, pneumonia, UTIS, abscesses. Learn signs of sepsis, systemic infection, fever, rapid heart rate, confusion, low blood pressure. Sepsis kills in hours if untreated. Recognizing it early is the difference between life and death. Surgical reality. In prolonged collapse, you might face situations requiring surgical intervention without medical facilities. Appendicitis, infected wounds requiring drainage, severe lacerations, dental abscesses. I'm not suggesting you perform surgery. I'm saying you need to understand the risk calculation. Sometimes no intervention means certain death. Amateur intervention means probable death. You choose probable over certain. Historical precedent, Civil War medicine, WWI field hospitals, frontier medicine, high mortality rates but non-zero survival rates. Books like The Survival Medicine Handbook by Dr. Joe Alton provide surgical guidance for laypersons in crisis situations. Pop culture reality. The Last of Us handled this brutally. Ellie stitching Joel's abdominal wound with sewing thread, the infection, the fever, the desperate search for antibiotics. That's accurate. Trauma in collapse scenarios often isn't the initial injury, it's the infection afterward, or The Walking Dead, Herschel's leg amputation after bite. They had a veterinarian, basic tools, and prayer. Herschel survived. That's actually plausible with proper technique, aggressive infection control, and luck. But notice what the show depicted. Massive resource investment, time, medication, monitoring for one person. Now multiply that across thousands of casualties. Historical parallel. The 1918 Spanish flu pandemic killed 50 to 100 million people globally, more than World War I. Why? Medical infrastructure overwhelmed. No antibiotics, not invented yet, no ventilators, limited understanding of virology. Hospitals filled beyond capacity. Healthcare workers died from exposure. Society continued functioning, but healthcare collapsed for 2 years. Death rate was 10 to 20% in some areas. And that was with food supply continuing, with electricity, with basic social order. Imagine that pandemic during infrastructure collapse. Or consider battlefield medicine evolution. Civil War, 60% mortality for abdominal wounds. WWI, 40%. World War II, 25%. Modern warfare, 10%. That improvement came from antibiotics, blood transfusions, rapid evacuation, surgical technique, and advanced equipment. Remove those advantages, mortality rates revert to historical norms. Here's the truth nobody wants to acknowledge. Modern medicine has made us dependent and fragile. Your grandfather could set a broken arm, stitch a wound, deliver a baby, pull a tooth. You Google symptoms and wait for the doctor. That knowledge gap kills you when doctors aren't available. The medical infrastructure doesn't collapse gradually, it hits hard stops. Generators run out of fuel, hard stop. Medication supplies deplete, hard stop. Staff abandons, hard stop. Each hard stop pushes mortality rates back decades or centuries, 48 hours. That's your window from everything's fine to welcome to 1850s medicine. And in the 1850s, life expectancy was 40 years. Half of children died before age 5. A broken leg could be a death sentence. Your CVS pharmacy and emergency room aren't modern convenience. They're the only reason you're probably still alive despite that appendicitis you had at 19, that infection you got last year, that medication managing your thyroid condition, and they just closed. Permanently. Week 1, Day 7. You're standing in what used to be your comfortable suburban neighborhood, and it doesn't look like a war zone. There are no burning buildings, no bodies in the streets, no Mad Max vehicles roaring past. It looks quiet, almost normal, except for the smell. That's new. That's the sewage backing up because the water treatment plant lost power 6 days ago and there's nowhere for waste to go. That's the garbage piling up because sanitation workers stopped coming on day 3. That's the faint sweetness of decay from the house 3 doors down where Mrs. Patterson, the diabetic retiree, didn't make it past day 4 without insulin. This is what collapse actually looks like. Not dramatic, just the slow, suffocating multiplication of small failures into civilizational death. Here's what you didn't understand. I've been describing these collapses as separate events: electrical grid, supply chain, civil order, financial systems, medical infrastructure. That was pedagogical convenience, a lie of omission, because in reality, they don't collapse separately. They collapse together, each one accelerating the others in a cascading feedback loop that turns bad into catastrophic, so fast you can't track which domino fell first anymore. The math of interdependence. Systems theory has a principle called tight coupling, when components of a system are so interdependent that changes in one immediately affect all others. Modern civilization is the most tightly coupled system ever created. Every infrastructure depends on every other infrastructure. Remove one, the others start failing within hours. Week 2, day 14. There's a knock on your door, 3 sharp raps, confident, deliberate. You freeze because you've been living in silent darkness for 13 days and nobody should know anyone's home. You peek through the blackout curtains. It's Dave from 2 houses down. Dave with the boat and the flag on his porch. Dave who you've waved to for 5 years. Dave who's smiling. But Dave's lost maybe 15 pounds in 2 weeks, and there are 3 other guys behind him you don't recognize, and they're all carrying something. Baseball bats, tire irons, 1 pistol tucked in a waistband. Dave knows you're home. Dave's been watching, and Dave's not here for a friendly chat. This is the collapse nobody prepares for because nobody wants to believe it. The supply chain fails, expected. The grid dies, planned for. But Dave, friendly Dave who helped you move that couch last summer? Dave becoming a threat feels like betrayal. It feels unfair. It feels like somehow you failed at human society. Wrong. You failed at understanding what humans actually are when the comfortable illusion of civilization drops away. The psychology of desperation. Let's establish baseline reality. Humans aren't inherently good or evil. We're adaptable. We respond to incentives and constraints. Civilization is a constraint system. Laws, social norms, consequences, abundance. Those constraints shape behavior into patterns we call morality. Remove the constraints, behavior reverts to primal drives: survival, resource acquisition, in-group protection, out-group exploitation. Psychologist Abraham Maslow developed the hierarchy of needs. Bottom tier, physiological needs: food, water, shelter, safety. Middle tiers, belonging, esteem. Top tier, self-actualization. Here's the critical insight. When bottom tier needs aren't met, everything else becomes irrelevant. Your starving neighbor doesn't care about being a good person. They care about feeding their child. Your dehydrated coworker doesn't care about property rights. They care about water, and they'll do whatever it takes to get it. Timeline of moral decay. Days 1 to 3, shock and social cohesion. People help neighbors, share resources, maintain pre-collapse social norms. Days 4 to 7, realization and anxiety. Resources depleting. Helping becomes calculated. Can I afford to share? Days 8 to 14, tribalism emerges. Family first, close friends maybe. Everyone else becomes potential threat or potential resource. Weeks 3 to 4, survival mode. Moral constraints erode. Theft, violence, exploitation become normalized. Month 2 plus, complete breakdown. Might makes right. The strong prey on the weak. Society regresses to pre-civilization tribalism. This isn't theory. This is documented pattern from every major societal collapse in history. The numbers game. Let's run the math on your neighborhood. Assume 100 houses. Average household, 2.5 people. That's 250 people within walking distance. Of those 250 people, approximately 15 to 20% have preparedness supplies beyond a few days. Generous estimate. That's 40 people who are relatively okay. The other 210 people? They're desperate by week 2. They're hungry. They're thirsty. They're scared, and they're looking at those 40 houses that seem to be managing better and doing the rational calculation. They have resources. I need resources. They're 40, we're 210. We take what they have. The prepared minority becomes target, not because they're bad people, because they're visible resources in an environment of scarcity. But it's worse than that. Of your 100 houses, statistically, 2 to 3 have serious criminals, people with violence backgrounds, drug dealers, domestic abusers. These people have skill sets in intimidation, violence, coordination. They're natural leaders in collapse scenarios. They organize, they recruit. Suddenly those 210 desperate people have leadership that knows how to take what they want through force. And then there's opportunistic predation. About 3 to 5% of the population has antisocial personality traits, limited empathy, willingness to exploit others, enjoyment of power. In normal society, these people are constrained by laws and consequences. Remove constraints, they flourish. They become warlords, gang leaders, slave traders. Because collapse doesn't just remove societal protection, it creates opportunities for those who were always waiting for the rules to stop applying. The fix. This is the hardest section to write because the solutions require accepting things about humanity that feel wrong. But feelings don't stop Dave and his 3 friends from breaking down your door. Threat assessment and profiling. Right now, before collapse, you need to assess your neighborhood. Who's a potential ally? Who's a potential threat? Who's prepared? Who's desperate? Who has weapons? Who has medical skills? Who has combat experience? Who has criminal background? This feels like paranoid profiling. It's intelligence gathering. Military and intelligence services do this constantly. Assess all actors in operational theater. Your neighborhood is your operational theater. Make lists. Literal lists. Houses with preparations visible. Generators, gun stickers, prepper mentality. Houses with vulnerable residents, elderly, disabled, single parents. Houses with potential threats, suspicious activity, aggressive residents, large groups of young males. Houses with useful skills, nurses, mechanics, farmers, veterans. These lists inform your strategy. Who to potentially ally with, who to avoid, who to watch. Community selection and vetting. If you're building a mutual aid/defense group, which you should be, vet carefully. Trust is resource. Wasted trust kills you. You want people with useful skills, people with resources to contribute, people with demonstrated reliability, people with moral frameworks, not nice people, people with functional ethics under stress. You don't want people who will panic, people who will betray the group for personal advantage, people with nothing to contribute who will be pure drain on resources, people with ethical frameworks so rigid they'll get everyone killed. We can't defend ourselves. That's wrong. Vetting process. Start with casual preparedness conversations. Gauge their realistic assessment of risk. People in denial won't survive. Meet families. Assess group cohesion. Interview individually and together. Look for consistency. Start small cooperation. Share minor resource. See if reciprocated. Build trust gradually through tested exchanges before committing to serious alliance. OPSEC and threat mitigation. Don't advertise what you have. Don't talk about preparations. Don't display supplies, equipment, weapons. Every person who knows you have resources is potential threat or potential leak to threats. This means lying to neighbors about your situation. Yeah, we're struggling too. Almost out of food. Even when you're not, especially when you're not. The prepared house that everyone knows is prepared gets hit first. Physical security becomes critical. Hard target methodology, reinforced doors, window security, perimeter barriers, defensive positions, but also deception. Make house look abandoned or already looted. Broken window, deliberate. Door slightly ajar. Garbage piled up. Anything that signals nothing valuable here, already ransacked. Defensive strategy, layered response. First layer, avoid detection. Don't be seen, don't be heard. Don't create smoke, light, or noise. Be invisible. Second layer, deter investigation. Hard target appearance. Warning signs, even if bluffing about capabilities. Visible defenses. Third layer, repel intruders. Non-lethal if possible. Warning shots, pepper spray, barriers. Lethal if necessary. Fourth layer, pursue fleeing attackers. Number, never. Let them leave. Pursuit exposes you, expends resources, creates blood feuds. The negotiation versus violence calculus. When Dave knocks, you have options. Option 1, negotiate. I don't have much, but here's small amount if you leave peacefully. This works if Dave's desperate but not yet violent. You lose resources but avoid fight. Option 2, refuse. Go away, I can't help you. This works if you can back up threat with credible force. Dave calculates whether attacking is worth it. If your security is credible, he moves to easier target. Option 3, preemptive violence. You shoot through door. This stops immediate threat but creates new problems. Noise attracts attention, creates hostility with other neighbors, might be wrong assessment. Maybe Dave really was just asking for help. There's no universal answer, context dependent. But here's the principle. Every interaction is negotiation about power and resources. The outcome depends on who has more leverage. Your leverage, fortified position, supplies, weapons, allies. Their leverage, numbers, desperation, willingness to use violence. You're constantly calculating whether costs of conflict exceed costs of cooperation or capitulation. Group dynamics and gang formation. By week 3, your neighborhood reorganizes into factions. The houses with resources and defenses band together. The desperate form scavenging groups. The predators organize raiding parties. This is tribal warfare with modern weapons. Each group needs leadership structure, resource management, security protocols, rules of engagement. Without these, groups fracture or get conquered by better organized groups. Your group's rules need to be explicit and ruthlessly enforced. How are resources shared? Equal? By contribution? By need? How are disputes resolved? Leadership decision? Group vote? Trial system? How are threats handled? Warnings? Ejection? Lethal force? What's the membership process? Open? Closed? Vetting required? These questions have no right answers, only functional and dysfunctional answers. Dysfunctional rules create internal conflict that destroys the group from inside. Functional rules create cohesion that lets groups survive external threats. Pro tip: women and children become high-value targets in collapse scenarios. Not for reasons you want to think about. Human trafficking, forced labor, sexual exploitation, these aren't movie fiction, they're historical constant when societal protections fail. Every collapse in history shows this pattern. Vulnerable populations get exploited by those with power. Protection of vulnerable members requires armed security, concealment of their presence, defensive protocols, and, unfortunately, willingness to use lethal force against predators. Because the guys who come for your daughters aren't looking to negotiate, they're counting on you not being willing to do what's necessary to stop them. Prove them wrong. The Walking Dead eventually figured this out. The zombies weren't the main threat. Other survivor groups were: the Governor, Negan, the Whisperers. Each represented different aspects of human threat: totalitarian control, resource extraction through violence, complete abandonment of humanity. The show depicts the moral calculus. Rick's group starts as idealists trying to maintain pre-collapse ethics. They get their ass kicked repeatedly. They learn, they become pragmatic, they do terrible things to survive, and the show asks, at what point do you become the thing you're afraid of? Or, the road. Yes, again, because McCarthy understood this. The cannibals weren't monsters. They were humans who'd run out of food and made a choice. The road gangs weren't evil. They were organized survival groups using violence to acquire resources. The good guys in that book survived by avoiding everyone, trusting no one, being willing to kill anyone who threatened them. That's not heroism, that's realistic survival strategy. Siege of Leningrad, World War II. 872-day siege by Nazi Germany. Over 1 million civilians died, mostly from starvation. Documented cases of cannibalism, people eating wallpaper paste, leather, pets, eventually other humans. Police forces established special units to stop cannibal gangs. This wasn't monsters. This was regular people pushed past every moral boundary by sustained starvation. Or the Rwandan genocide, 1994. 800,000 people killed in 100 days. Neighbors killing neighbors with machetes. People who'd lived peacefully together for decades suddenly slaughtering each other because tribal identification became more important than individual relationship. The lesson? Social cohesion is fragile. Remove the right constraints, activate the right tribal triggers, and regular people commit atrocities. Or Yugoslavia's breakup, 1990s. Modern European country. Functioning infrastructure. Then, ethnic tensions, economic collapse, political destabilization. Result: Bosnian War, ethnic cleansing, concentration camps, systematic rape as weapon of war, siege of Sarajevo, snipers shooting civilians for sport, and these were neighbors, co-workers, classmates before the war. Civilization collapsed in months, not years. Here's the truth that survival instructors don't emphasize because it's uncomfortable. The supply chain failing won't kill you. The grid dying won't kill you. Your neighbors will kill you because they need what you have, and you're just one family trying to defend finite resources against dozens or hundreds of desperate people who've concluded that taking is easier than starving. Dave isn't coming to kill you because he's evil. He's coming to take your food because his kids are hungry and you're the only neighbor who seems to have any. From his perspective, you're the villain hoarding resources while children starve. From your perspective, you're protecting your family from theft. Both perspectives are valid. Both can't coexist. Someone wins, someone loses. And the person who wins is the person who understands that morality is a luxury purchased with security and abundance. When those disappear, morality disappears with them. The human variable isn't variable at all. It's predictable. Scarcity plus desperation equals violence every time, throughout history, without exception. Week 2 isn't about managing resources. It's about managing humans who want your resources. And humans, as it turns out, are the most dangerous thing you'll face in any collapse scenario. Dave's still knocking. You need to answer, and your answer determines whether you survive week 3.